Okay, welcome to the TNT Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, TNT Tomlinson, and I'm here with my co-host, Ironbar Boxing, and today we have a very special guest here with us. He was the former IBF Junior Middleweight Champion of the world, once held the record for being the youngest junior middleweight champion. His record as an amateur is 105-0, and his record as a pro is 32-3-2. He fought boxing legends like Wilfred Benitez and Vito Antuofermo. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Hilton.
Hey, hello everybody.
Hi Matthew, how are you doing?
Great, how you doing?
Good. What made you want to start boxing?
Well, it was a kind of a family tradition. One followed another. I had two older brothers, Davey and Alec, and then they were boxing. Alec followed Davey, and then I followed Alec. So it was just kind of tradition. One copy of the other.
What was your childhood kind of like?
It was kind of rough because there wasn't much to be done in boxing in Montreal in those days. So my father had a real hard time. He had 5 boys and 1 girl. And it was kind of rough growing up, but don't ask me how, but he did it and survived.
Yeah. So speaking of that, Davey Hilton Sr., he held the Canadian championship in 3 different divisions: featherweight, welterweight, and light middleweight. I heard something about your dad fighting in every division from featherweight to heavyweight. Is that true?
Absolutely true.
That's great.
Well, he would take fights anywhere, at the end they were kind of using them. They'd send him anywhere, South Africa, anywhere, Jamaica. He went everywhere as an opponent. So it was kind of hard. He went through the rough times.
So besides your dad, Matthew, who were some of the fighters that you admired growing up?
Of course, I'd have to say my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a big fan of Roberto Duran.
Oh, he's a great one.
Yeah, I was a great fan of his. And the worst thing is, this is off the record, but it doesn't really matter, but I'm just talking. It almost happened that I fought him.
Well, you guys, it was the perfect time, right? Because it was
the
mid-'80s. He was a light middleweight.
Exactly.
He beat Davey Moore in '83. I think he fought Hagler in '83, and then of course Hearns got to him in '84.
'84.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't recall that, but I just remember it was in the books of me getting ready to fight.
That would have been amazing.
That would be an honor just to meet him.
Yeah. But you mentioned something about your dad. What was it like going on the road with your dad and your whole family during his pro career?
Well, it was like work, actually. Got to go do my job. And that's what we did. Did our job. See, we lived all our life in Quebec. And it was kind of hard because we had a reputation and nobody would fight us. So we had to go. My poor father, and we didn't have no financial means. And my father would drive for miles. In those days, near Toronto and Ontario was more active than in Montreal.
Now, you guys had a trailer set up for all this stuff too. Is that true?
Yep.
Did your dad put that together? I guess that wouldn't be something that came off the lot at Canadian Tire.
Exactly. Exactly. You're exactly right. I mean, you know what a medicine ball is?
Yeah.
Well, my poor dad would hold it for every one of us. That was our punching bag.
Jeez.
Wow. Speaking of that, for your whole childhood, boxing was in your family. Your brothers were boxers as well as your father. How much did that help you become such an amazing fighter?
To tell you the truth, it helped me because Davey and Alec, I followed, and I did try not to make the same mistakes as they did, so I kind of learned from them, actually. I don't do what he did, and then I got a second time, don't do what Alec did, so, unless I was that stupid.
Well, you know what, I only figured out how to learn from my mistakes later in life at 49, so it's good that you learn when you're younger.
Well, in a sporting event, it is kind of hard. You learn, especially in boxing, you learn the hard way.
Yeah, it's the school of hard knocks.
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
So I read that your father pulled you and your brothers out of high school, like to turn professional as teenagers, and you guys never really went to school because in Davey Senior's eyes, it wouldn't give you guys enough time to develop into boxers. Looking back, do you feel like this helped or hindered you in your career or life after boxing?
I think absolutely it helped. Boxing's a very, very dedicated sport, and you got to give it. You can't just put one foot in and one foot out. You got to have both feet in there all the way. It's a hard sport.
No kidding. So, Matthew,
you have to do the schooling and everything.
It's hard to fit everything in there.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
So, anyway, you were a great amateur. You had an undefeated record of 105 and you turned pro in 83. But the Olympics were just the next year. So why didn't you stay another year in the amateurs to compete in the 84 Olympics?
Well, it was just during that time, it was kind of easy to make my decision because that was, I believe, 84.
Yep.
And I would tell you the truth, I was very thrilled to go to the Olympics. I wanted to go to the Olympics. But then I had 104 fights up to that time, 104 or 105 fights up to that time. And they decided to make this new rule. And my father had been in my corner of 105 fights. And it was very easy. I didn't feel comfortable without my father being in the most important aspect of my life.
Okay, makes sense.
And when researching for this podcast, I found an article that mentioned you lived with Tyson in Catskills for a bit. What was that like?
Actually, we brought Mike. We stayed there. Well, we had connections. We were living with Mike. Nobody ever knew of Mike. But the reason we went over there, and he happened to be there, was Amato was our trainer.
What was it like getting interacting and getting trained by Cuss?
Well, to tell you the truth, you might pick some things off him, this and that, but we're already developed our style, and there's nothing really Cuss could have done to make our careers better. I don't believe this is completely my opinion, but there's nothing he could have done to improve anything about us. Our styles and everything were already developed.
You'd been doing that since you were a little kid, and those smokers when you were like just a little guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you.
My dad did that all himself as well. We were in New York. He brought us to different places just to be in the gyms around fighters. That we get the smell of it, the smell of the gyms, the sweat.
Right.
Yeah. And you have fought some great fighters in your career, boxing legends. Out of all the fighters that you fought, who do you have the most respect for?
It's hard to say. I would be lying. I respected everybody. In my own way, in their own way, I respected anybody. Obviously, Wilfred, Benitez, and Vito Antuofermo would come up first.
Right.
And, of course, Buster Drayton, who I won the title off of.
Yeah. He was a tough, underrated guy, I think.
Yeah, very tough, yes.
I mean, I thought, well, we'll probably deal with this later, but it was just such a great fight. But Patrick's going to ask you about the Antuofermo and Benitez.
Yeah. You were 19 years old when you fought Vito Antuofermo and 20 years old when you fought Wilfred Benitez. Both of these fighters were highly regarded and still are. They're former world champions. And you were so young when you fought them. Going into these fights, were you intimidated by their resumes and reputations?
I was never intimidated, no. But everywhere, it was like I was the star. They walked into the Montreal Paul Sauvé or Montreal Forum, and it was like it was me the star. The crowd went out of their minds, so it was like I was the star. So no, I wasn't. I can't say intimidated at all.
Oh, and what was it like to fight Wilfred Benitez?
An honor. A real honor. Being in there with a 3-time world champion.
And how tough was Vito Antuofermo? Because he's sort of a scary-looking guy, too. He looks like somebody...
This is off the record, but I talked to him on the phone the other day, the first time since I fought him.
No way, you did?
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I got his phone number in my pocket. I don't know how, a friend of a friend or whatever, and he wanted to talk, and I spoke to him yesterday, actually.
That's really cool. You're getting a busy week here.
Yeah.
Hey, that's great.
But here, to tell you the truth, he's got to be the toughest. Just toughness. I hit him with everything and didn't budge.
The skin broke, but he didn't.
Exactly.
He was never knocked out.
I don't think he was ever knocked out. I might have been knocked down.
I don't think so either.
I mean, cuts, right? That was his downfall.
You'd have to kill that man in the ring. You will not put him down.
Oh, wow.
Kind of. Oh, wait.
So, Matthew, you started boxing, so you're really young, about 5, and it was your dad's dream, and probably your dream too, but it was your dad's dream to see one of his sons become world champ. And how did you feel after they read those scorecards and you were the new IBF champ, and you were the first Canadian world champ in almost 6 decades? So what was that like?
I didn't really care about all that history. Ever since I was a little kid, I used to dream about hearing those words, the new world champion. That's all I ever. I didn't want money. I didn't want nothing. I just wanted to have that title, world champion. And thank God I got. And it's very rare somebody gets their goal. And I got my goal at 21 years old. I wanted to be world champion, and I did.
Amazing.
Yeah. And when looking back at some of your fights, I noticed Jimmy Ellis in your corner.
Yep.
What was your relationship with Jimmy like, and what was it like having someone like the former heavyweight champ Jimmy Ellis in your corner?
Well, again, that was my father's connections, and we run into Jimmy Ellis several times on the road in different fights. I believe the first time I ran into him was in Buffalo. I believe it was in Buffalo. And he just kind of grew on to us, and then my dad asked him, did he want to come into our team, and Jimmy was right there. Or I believe his son was one of my sparring partners.
Wow. And for a while, you were a star athlete in the province of Quebec and packed venues like the Montreal Forum. How would you mentally prepare yourself for fighting in front of so many fans?
Well, to tell you the truth, it was the challenge of being there. I didn't really care about the fans and all that. Of course, it helped being, having them behind you, encouraging. But I knew what I wanted. I was lucky at a young age. I knew what I wanted.
So when I was a teenager, we went to I didn't have pay-per-view or anything like that. So I went out to the racetrack near my house in the country where I lived, and they were showing the fight card where you fought Iron Man Jack Callahan on the Mike Tyson undercard.
Right.
So that must have been exciting. That was a huge fight. That was a history-making fight card,
First defense of your title.
First defense of your title. So what was that night like?
To tell you the truth, great honor being on the undercard of Mike Tyson. But like I said, I didn't really care that much. I cared about my Canadian fans and doing what I could for Canada. And I think I did my part.
Amazing.
So like I mentioned earlier, you trained since age 5, and that IBF title was very important to you. What was going through your mind once you found out you lost the decision and your world title to Robert Hines in 1988?
It's kind of hard. I knew I wasn't ready for the fight. I was injured prior to the fight. I should have listened to my father. I was hurt with my ribs, and my dad said, let's go home. And I figured I could get him.
You almost had him.
And everybody knows what happened.
Oh, and speaking of the rib injury, could you walk us through exactly how that rib injury occurred?
Well, it happened. Don't ask me how it was. And I was struggling with my weight, so maybe that had something to do with it. I was starving myself, but I was during a sparring match with a guy that wasn't really a big puncher at all, and I felt it go into my stomach, and I cut the wind completely off me, and he was no puncher whatsoever who I was boxing with.
So, and you came over in a few, 5 pounds over the junior middleweight limit before that title defense, or you had about 24 hours to lose 5 pounds and then fight to keep your world championship. So how did you lose that much weight, and how did that affect your performance, do you think?
To my performance. Lack of discipline. I got nobody to blame but myself. Lack of discipline. I should have been by the most 1 pound over. Never mind 5 pounds. And the way of losing the weight, I went running, jogging in the park. Where I had no business the same day as the fight.
That'll tire you out.
And what is your dream fight? If you could fight any fighter from any era, who would that be?
Of course, the fight my idol, Roberto Duran.
That would be a great fight.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. So I heard somewhere that you sparred Doug DeWitt a few years before the two of you fought for the title. How did that go?
Yeah, I sparred with. I was in New York City at the time, and I sparred with Doug a few times.
Cool.
It's been so long ago. I'm not quite. Remember him? He didn't want to spar. Didn't want to spar with us anymore.
You must have worked him over a little bit.
The body, he didn't like it there.
So on January 15th, 1990, you got another shot at the world title when you fought Doug DeWitt for the WBO middleweight title. That fight was stopped at the end of the 11th round, and because of that fight, you suffered a retina injury. Looking back, do you think that fight should have been stopped earlier?
I think I was winning, but who knows? My dad made the decision, and he probably made the right decision because I had no business being there in the 11th round with Doug DeWitt. I should have stopped that fight a lot earlier. I should have stopped Doug.
And
he wasn't at his prime either, as I wasn't.
He was still a very tough guy, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your eyes were already busted up a little from I think it was Furman Chirino draw.
But it wasn't really from that fight. I was taking, like I said, I was struggling with weight. I was taking these kind of pills for and I don't know if that's what made it swell up. But I remember when I got hit in the eye, it hurt.
Okay.
Hurt like hell.
So I loved
And both swelled up like in seconds.
Yeah, it looked like you were stung by a bee. Or two bees.
Yep. And,
yeah.
I didn't.
So I loved what you did in the 5th and 6th rounds of the DeWitt fight. You did everything a fighter in your position should do. You covered up and protected your right eye. When you had a chance, you landed some good punches, and DeWitt barely landed anything. I just wanted to comment kind of on that.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, you said, like, after winning the title, I mean, it's such a huge high, and, you lost some of your motivation and some of the discipline that had got you there. And
the worst thing is Patrick, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that your name, Patrick?
Patrick and Pete. So the old voice is Peter, and the young one is Patrick.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Peter.
Don't worry.
I took you for Patrick. Sorry.
Okay.
It all comes to the same thing. I didn't listen to what I was told. I haven't got nothing to say. It all came to I didn't listen.
That's good advice for everybody.
Yeah.
Because
who's been there? You listen, and they'll tell you what exactly my father had told me did happen. Right to a T almost.
Well, there you go.
If it happened to him, I don't know.
Father knows best.
Yep.
Besides beating Drayton and winning that world title, what is your favorite moment from your boxing career?
My favorite what?
Your favorite moment from your boxing career?
Obviously is winning the title. When I heard the announcer and the new, obviously
And what about?
Like I said, I didn't care about money or anything. I just wanted that title name, champion of the world.
And what was your second favorite moment? Do you have a second favorite moment?
I'm trying to think. No, I don't.
Okay.
What was the toughest fight of your career?
Well, that's kind of easy. It's probably winning the title because it meant so much to me. That it's hard to say your toughest, but that was the one that meant so much for me. So it's probably that one.
And it was a 15-round fight, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
amazing.
And it went 15 rounds.
And it went 15, and they didn't do 15 rounds for much longer after that.
Exactly. Yeah, I believe that. I'm not sure if that was the last one or. Because I don't remember any fights after that.
Yeah, it's got to be one of the last ones.
Yeah, and I remember your other fights after, right? Your first 2 defenses, they were 12-round fights.
They were scheduled for 12.
Yeah, I don't remember any 15-rounders after that, but I'd be lying if I said it. It's a long time ago.
So I noticed that in many of your fights, you wore tartan boxing shorts. Was there a reason behind that?
Yes, because we're Scottish descent, and that's the trunks I always wore, was the Royal Stewart tartan.
Those are the greatest looking shorts, I think. That's like iconic, like the Montreal Canadiens logo.
The Montreal Canadiens.
For me, anyway, right?
Pardon me?
For me, that's like an amazing look.
Yeah.
It's iconic.
It had more to do with, never mind the look, it had more to do with tradition.
That's beautiful.
So some fighters later become friends with their opponents. You mentioned...
Nobody knew. People that are non-Scottish, they're wondering, what kind of shorts are they? I got comments a lot on my shorts.
They thought they were the Hudson's Bay or something like that. Or
stupid jokes like that.
Dominion.
Yeah, and some fighters later become friends with their opponents. You mentioned earlier, like you and Vito Fermo contacting each other. Besides that, do you have any? Did you come into contact with any of the fighters that you fought?
Actually, not really. Because, like I had told you before, most of my fights after signing with Don King, I'd probably say they were all in the States. It was all my bigger fights were all American. So no, I'm not really in contact with nobody.
And what advice would you give to a young pro fighter today?
The advice I would is get is listen to your trainer who is ever out for you and get out as soon as possible.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah. And what do you think is the most important skill in boxing?
Pardon me?
What do you think is the most important skill in boxing?
Most important skill, probably defense.
That makes sense.
And I don't like his style, but I got to take my hat off to him. He's got it down to a tier. Is that Floyd Mayweather Jr.?
Yeah, he's on fire for defense.
I don't like that kind of style, but my God, you can't hit him.
No, it's not exciting to watch, but it certainly is effective, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And he still made like tens and tens.
And that's the object of boxing. Hit and not get hit.
Yeah.
So I can't say nothing about him. I'm not a fan of his, but that's the object of boxing.
That's the respect.
So for a while now...
5 cents to go see him, but...
Yeah, so for a while now, I've been wanting to know the answer to this question. What's going through a boxer's mind in between rounds?
In between rounds? What would go through mine is what exactly I'm going to do.
So you would actually stop and think about strategy and...
do I keep up what I'm doing? Well, you got your corner in there talking to you, and it's kind of hard for me to comment on that because you got your corner in there telling you, like in my sense, it's my father.
Yeah.
But in telling you what to do, your corner can see more than you can see inside.
Right.
They're on the outside, so they can see in, I guess.
Okay.
How do you feel about today's era of pro fighters?
Pardon me?
How do you feel about today's era of pro fighters?
Well, I find it's changed so much. Now it's all about money. I find that there's so much money. Like, I'm not knocking him. He probably deserves everything he gets. But Mayweather Jr., I mean, there's so much money involved now. I don't even find it an interesting sport. And I don't follow it that much either anymore.
So is there any fighter from today or maybe history who you think reminds you of yourself or your style?
Not really.
Okay. Well, you're pretty unique anyway.
Not really. But although, I get a lot, and I gotta say, but he looks like me. I don't know if he fights like me, but is that, what's his,
Canelo Alvarez. Yeah, that's a good call.
Alvarez, that's it, yep.
You guys got a similar body. You guys even got similar coloring.
Yeah, a lot of people comment, he looks like Matthew.
Man.
That's how I knew him. I said, who? I looked on the TV. I said, yeah, it does.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
How do you feel about old fighters coming out of retirement and fighting in exhibitions like Mike Tyson and Roy Jones?
What I think about that, I think they should. Exhibitions is no big deal, like shows and stuff like that. But go out, like I should have. Go out as champion. Go out as people see you, not to see you on the ground or down and kick you while you're down. Go out at your best. Don't go out at your lowest.
Yeah, and I remember after watching the Tyson Jones fight, like, I was, like, looking forward to it, just seeing those guys in the ring, but after seeing it, I realized these guys should not be in the ring. Like, I mean, they put on maybe a bit of exciting performances, and I just looked at them and just looked like how old they were, like, they're old, worn down bodies, and I was like, they definitely shouldn't be in the ring.
And you always see that happen. You always see them, and they always come back for it.
I know, they really do. I mean, you retired and you stayed retired. How did you manage to stay retired and not come back like everybody else?
To tell you the truth, I don't know. I thought in my mind, I still think in my mind. But, and I stayed hanging them up, and my days are over, and that's how it stayed.
Well, that's really good, because too many guys come out, and it's pretty dangerous for you.
Yeah. Exactly.
It never ends well, right? The money is never worth the damage.
No, it's never worth.
Not
Your
at all.
brain's being scrambled, and I got two boys. I don't encourage them. They don't want to know nothing about boxing, but I don't encourage them either.
Do they know how famous that you are?
Oh yeah, they read about it on the internet and
Oh,
everything.
cool.
But
That's very cool.
they did, yeah. And I don't push them at all. They come to me, tell me to bring them to the gym. I'll do it, of course. But it's their decision.
Yeah. So before we go, is there anything that you'd like to promote, Matthew?
Pardon me?
Anything you'd like to promote or say hi to anybody?
No, nothing at all.
Okay, well, you know what? This was just great. It was great talking.
Thank you very much for checking out this episode of the TNT Boxing Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the official YouTube channel of the TNT Boxing Podcast.